Hey everybody, how are you guys doing out there? Like, subscribe, share with a friend, you know the deal. And finally, part 2 of my look at the Arles Primes. And so why did this take forever? Well, that's a fair question because I wanted to get more experience using these lenses and I wasn't necessarily happy with the first version that I shot. So this is a complete redo, take 2. There's a few other videos out there that show you what these lenses look like, and I'm going to do that later in this video, but I wanted to talk about the practical aspects of shooting with these lenses because they're big and they're heavy, and I know a lot of people have probably mentioned that, but I'm not quite sure that they really get into how significantly that can change or affect your shooting. Here I've got this set up with my Fuji X-H2 and I've got the battery booster file transmitter on the bottom, and you know, it actually looks like it fits pretty good. And that is because the body is up a bit higher so that I can get the lens support in here. I've got the motor on here on the other side, and everything seems to line up and fit pretty well because the lens is up high enough. On a regular mirrorless camera, body of the lens might actually be slightly taller than the bottom of the lens. So you're going to need to look for a base plate that has some sort of riser built in. The other thing that I have to mention here is I'm using one of the Tilta supplied shims, the screw-in riser, but I actually machined this down. I took about 1/4 of an inch off it, and I've got 2 or 3 of these now in my kit so that I can easily work with this. This is the Tilta lens support, which is pretty adjustable, pretty configurable. Initially, I was using it and screwing it into the 3/8 foot that is on all of the lenses, and that became an absolute slow monster to have to unscrew this every time you wanted to change lenses. It made lens changing just come to a crawl. If you have a PL adapter that has a screw attachment that firmly attaches it onto the bottom of your camera cage, absolutely use it. You want to make this as rigid as possible because even the good adapters are going to have a little bit of play in them. One thing for sure is you don't want to go with one of those cheap brand X $100 adapters. Get the DZO converter mount. They're the heaviest, tightest, best built PL adapters that are on the market right now, at least the ones that I've tested so far personally. The next thing I did mention was this is a 86mm filter thread. Okay, except everything that I've got has an adapter or is natively 82mm because that's an extremely common size for still camera lenses and small cinema lenses like the SLR Magics that I have. Where did that go? Well, it meant I had to go buy myself a couple of 86mm NDs. Great, more money. I got lucky. I found a set of Tokina NDs, which are really good, nice ND filters for like $125. So it was an amazing deal. And I picked up a couple of those 6 and 8 stop, I think, because that's what I tend to use most outside with these cameras now with their higher ISOs. And it also lets me hang these lenses more towards the wide open side. Now you could use the coupe rear filters, but the NDs are pretty limited and they throw off the culmination of the lens quite a bit. You could shim the lenses, whatever. We're not going to get into that here. I have another video on those. Getting a new set of ND filters is kind of a other hidden cost in getting these lenses set up. Now you might say, well, you could just use a matte box and use drop-in filters. I could, but you know what? I don't own a set of large drop-in filters, so this is what I had to work with. And the worst part is if you really did need to buy those are even more expensive, so pass on that for now. You're going to need all the rigging parts, so if you don't have all the pieces, expect that you're going to have to go out and probably spend a couple $100 to get all these other odds and ends so that everything mounts up correctly. Let's move on to an actual cinema camera. Here I've got the Canon native peel mount on the body, which pretty much tends to stay on there most of the time. And you notice I don't have any rods and stuff on here. Now normally, in the almost slightly bad old days, I had this guy on here. This is the shape shoulder plate, rear rods, front rods. You know, all the stuff goes on here and it pops in and out of a VCT plate. And, you know, it looks cool, it's convenient, it's heavy, it adds a few more pounds of weight, but if you really want to shoot handheld, you know, it's not a bad way to be set up. But being out when I was shooting all these examples with this camera, one thing that really changed for me very quickly was I stripped this camera down a bit. I had the viewfinder on here and I got the lens mount on here, and that's it. This is all I really need because this lens mount is heavy enough to take the load of these big lenses, and it works fine like this. For what I was shooting, didn't need a follow focus or anything. If I wanted to, I could have gone off of one of the top rods. I could have thrown a longer rod in here. So in comparison, you know, if you really want to use your mirrorless body, when they make great images, you really do need all this stuff on here. Then suddenly this gets to be maybe an 8 or 10 pound package, which is about the same as that without some of the conveniences. I hope this aspect has been useful for you guys out there, because it's actually really important for making your life happy when shooting with these lenses. And in all honesty, if you can't work with a mirrorless body fully rigged out, or with a cinema camera body, you should probably really consider the best bids, or perhaps any of the other smaller cine primes in the 2 something range, which are, you know, like 50% smaller and lighter. It'll be a much happier, much better experience for everyday shooting, especially if you need to be moving quick and you've got pretty minimal crew. Originally, I wanted to shoot everything on the XH2 in 8K to show off the sharpness of these lenses, because they're just phenomenally sharp with all those nice vintagey characteristics. The bokeh, for example, you can see what's going on over my shoulder here. It's not creamy mush. It's got some character and interest to it. Given the initial rig that I had, where I was screwing the lens support in and out manually, the lens changes were really slow. They were tedious. Very quickly, I wound up shooting on the Canon in 4K RAW, and it looks great. The bottom line is these lenses have plenty of sharpness. They do have some other interesting characteristics, and the 180 I've got some very specific comments about. Let's just go take a look at some images. Let's start with the 100mm and work our way down through the set. So just a series of the same shots. And the detail here is really pretty amazing, and if you can put this up on a larger 4K screen, it's really worth it to see all of the little things that are going on. The 100mm lens is certainly exceptionally sharp, as is the rest of the set. And I just did a little roll on the focus, and there's just absolutely no focus breathing, and you can see how wide open at 100mm, how incredibly shallow the depth of field can be, even at fairly far distance, where I guess this set of buildings is probably a good quarter mile away from me. I generally haven't graded these images. I have done a few minor adjustments to even out exposures, but that's it. I haven't really done anything else with them. And that's because I also wanted to see how consistent these lenses are with color between each of them. I think the 35 does get slightly warmer than the rest of the set, but you know, that could just be my particular copy. The 50mm, which looks perfectly fine here. Finally, the 35, which I think looks a smidge warmer than the other lenses, but this is something I'm going to have to keep my eye on with other shots. Finally, the 25, which is reasonably wide, and I can't wait to get the 18 coming out in September. This is a lens I've also used to shoot quite a bit of my previous YouTube videos for the last couple of months. It's a pretty versatile lens, especially in tighter quarters. Let's have a look at the 180 now. I love this lens because of the reach and its ability to go out and grab tight shots of things that are pretty distant. The 180 is different from the rest of the set in that it's really a little bit soft, wide open, but as you stop it down, it gets sharper, and you'll see that as I run through a couple of iris ramps here, and I did do a compensating grade to keep the image basically about even. And that's something you just really need to be aware of with this lens, is that the sharpness is very definitely iris setting dependent. So this lens is a little bit of an outlier in the rest of the Arles set, which are all sharp, even wide open. And now let's just run through some images from these lenses. That is my 6-month review of the Arles Primes, having gotten some experience with them and looking forward to getting more. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Appreciate all the subscribers who've been coming in over the last week or two, and leave your comments down below. Interested in what you guys think about these lenses. Catch you soon.